Welcome to Infinite Novel. Dive into epic alternate realities. All rights to original creators.
Chapter 1 Awakening the Sage Body. In a modest wooden house on the outskirts of Kanahagakure, a white-haired boy stared blankly at his reflection in the mirror. I can't believe it. I actually transmigrated to the world of Naruto. Jiraiya pinched his face in disbelief, his expression one of mixed shock and curiosity. Moments ago, he had been watching the epic battle between Jiraiya and Pain on his screen, but out of nowhere, a blinding white light shot out from the screen and struck him. The next thing he knew, he was in the world of Naruto, inhabiting none other than the body of Jiraiya himself. It didn't take long for him to accept the reality of his transmigration. Ding! The god-level sign-in system has been bound. A mechanical voice suddenly echoed in his mind. Jiraiya wasn't surprised. After all, a system was practically standard issue for transmigrators. Before arriving here, he had read countless novels with similar setups. What kind of abilities do you offer? Jiraiya asked, his tone brimming with anticipation. This world was incredibly dangerous. Without sufficient power, one could meet their end at any moment. Jiraiya, despite his legendary future, had started off as a weakling, a well-known loser among his peers. Unfortunately, he had been thrown into Jiraiya's early years. At this point, the young Jiraiya had graduated from the academy only 2 years ago. He had recently become a student of the third Hokage, alongside Orochimaru and Tsunade. However, he was currently just a chunin and a weak one at that. So naturally, he was eager to see what the system could do. This system allows the host to sign in once every 7 days to receive random rewards. Rewards include various jutsu, ninja tools, Kekkai Genkai, and more. Host, would you like to perform your first sign-in now? The mechanical voice finished its explanation and then posed the question. Sign in. Jiraiya replied without hesitation. First sign-in successful. Rewards: Sage Body and Seal Proficiency for all jutsu below S rank. T/N. Don't take the term Sage Body too literally. It doesn't refer to the body of the Sage of Six Paths himself. Instead, think of it as an enhanced version of his physical attributes. The system's announcement left Jiraiya stunned. Holy crap! That's insane, he exclaimed, thoroughly impressed by the system's generosity. Immediately, he felt a warm current flowing through his body, coursing through every fiber of his being. It felt as though his body was being fundamentally transformed. The sensation was both invigorating and comforting. Jiraiya could distinctly feel the chakra within him growing exponentially. In the Naruto world, lineage was everything. Those blessed with powerful bloodlines could wield far greater power than ordinary ninja. The Uchiha clan, for instance, was leagues above average due to their Sharingan. The Sage Body was an incredibly rare and powerful bloodline inherited from the Sage of Six Paths himself. It granted immense vitality and enormous chakra reserves. Senju Hashirama, known as the god of shinobi, owed much of his unparalleled power to his Sage Body. Fully mastering the Sage Body granted chakra reserves rivaling those of a tailed beast, along with extraordinary vitality and regenerative capabilities. Even if bisected, one could heal and survive an utterly overpowered ability. As for the reward of Seal Proficiency for jutsu below S rank, it was equally game-changing. Every jutsu required precise hand seals to activate, and the more powerful the technique, the more seals it demanded. Mastery of hand seals determined how quickly a ninja could execute a technique. With the system's gift, Jiraiya could now flawlessly execute any jutsu below S rank at incredible speed. The fastest hand seal practitioner in Naruto lore, Uchiha Itachi, could perform 7 seals in a single second, allowing him to overwhelm opponents with rapid-fire techniques. Jiraiya's newfound proficiency allowed him to achieve 4 seals per second, a speed that could further improve with practice. With the Sage Body and Seal Proficiency, I just need to learn some powerful jutsu. It won't be long before I reach the level of a Jonin. Once that happens, I'll have a real chance to survive in this world, Jiraiya said, clenching his fists with determination. He had always admired Jiraiya as a character but lamented his tragic life always falling just short of achieving his goals. If he was now Jiraiya, he vowed to rewrite that story. The first step was to grow stronger. As the warmth in his body subsided, Jiraiya flexed his muscles and felt a noticeable increase in his strength and agility. It seems the Sage Body also provides a massive boost to taijutsu training, he mused. Deciding to test his abilities, Jiraiya stepped out into his backyard, a spacious area complete with a training ground. The training ground, constructed by his parents, was well equipped but clearly neglected, as the tools were covered in a thick layer of dust. Slacking off like this, no wonder I was at the bottom of the class, Jiraiya muttered, shaking his head. In his inherited memories, the original Jiraiya rarely trained. Instead, he spent his free time lurking around the women's bathhouse, hoping to catch a glimpse of the unsuspecting bathers. His lecherous antics had earned him the nickname Little Pervert, and even the older women in the village avoided him like the plague. But now, things were going to change. Earth-style, swamp of the underworld. Jiraiya swiftly performed a series of hand seals, slamming his palms onto the ground. Chakra surged into the earth, transforming a patch of solid ground beneath a large boulder into a murky swamp. The boulder sank rapidly into the quagmire. Fire-style, flame bullet. Without missing a beat, Jiraiya performed another series of seals. He refined his chakra into oil, ignited it with fire release, and expelled 3 blazing projectiles from his mouth. The flaming bullets struck the sinking boulder, scorching it. Chapter 2 The Violent Tsunade Crack. The sound of breaking stone echoed as the flaming projectile struck. The massive boulder, under the impact of the fire release flame bullet, developed fractures. The direct hit left a dent, and the surrounding area turned to a glassy finish, evidence of the intense heat. Thanks to the oil-infused chakra within the flame bullet, the flames continued to burn, radiating scorching heat that slowly melted the stone. The terrifying aspect of fire release techniques lay in their extreme temperatures. As expected, the sage body amplifies the power of ninjutsu, Jiraiya murmured, gazing at the melting boulder with satisfaction. The potency of these techniques exceeded anything he had achieved before. From the memories he had inherited, Jiraiya knew that his previous attempts at Earth Release, Swamp of the Underworld and Fire Release, Flame Bullet were far less impressive. Previously, his Swamp of the Underworld could only affect a 3-meter radius and had limited effectiveness, barely sufficient to trap a grown man. Yet now, Jiraiya was nearly 8 meters from the boulder, easily channeling chakra to the target. And this wasn't even his limit. The boulder was over a meter long and half a meter wide. The swamp he conjured completely engulfed it, with room to spare. As for the flame bullet, Jiraiya had only been able to form one projectile before, with an attack range of less than 5 meters. Its strength was barely enough to break wood, and its temperature couldn't even scorch stone. With the sage body, the power of these techniques had effectively doubled. The flame bullet's strength now rivaled B-rank ninjutsu, and Jiraiya had just begun adapting to the sage body. He hadn't fully explored its potential yet. Over time, it would undoubtedly enhance his ninjutsu even further. Afterward, Jiraiya practiced some basic techniques: shadow clone jutsu, substitution jutsu, transformation jutsu, and body flicker jutsu. I need to learn a defensive technique as soon as possible, Jiraiya muttered after finishing his training. From his inherited memories, he realized that the previous Jiraiya hadn't mastered even one defensive jutsu. This was a glaring weakness in combat. He needed to address it quickly. Jiraiya decided to return to his house and search through the belongings his parents had left behind. Among their possessions, he recalled there were numerous scrolls detailing various ninjutsu. Jiraiya, you idiot. Are you still lazing around? As he stepped out of the training room, a shout rang from outside the yard. Bang! The courtyard gate burst open with tremendous force, one of the panels crashing to the ground. A young girl with a ponytail, clad in a green top that accentuated her ample chest, stomped into the yard. Tsunade, could you please stop being so violent? I would have opened the door for you. These gates are a pain to fix, you know, Jiraiya groaned at the sight. The newcomer was none other than Tsunade, granddaughter of the god of shinobi, Senju Hashirama, and the future 5th Hokage. Jiraiya recognized her instantly, not just from her iconic features but also because of her notable assets. Even at her young age, they were already impressive. Currently, both Tsunade and Jiraiya were Chunin, apprenticed under the 3rd Hokage. Jiraiya moved toward the fallen gate panel to prop it back up, but before he could, Tsunade stomped on it. The wood shattered into pieces. Jiraiya twitched. This was the 5th gate panel Tsunade had broken this month. Jiraiya, you idiot. Waking up early for once? Are you planning to spy on a bathhouse again? Tsunade scolded, hands on her hips, glaring at him. Hey, don't accuse me of things I didn't do. I woke up early to train my ninjutsu, not to peep. Jiraiya retorted hurriedly. Yeah, like I'd believe that, Tsunade shot back. Tomorrow, we're up against Danzo's students. How's your preparation going? Jiraiya sighed, knowing his reputation preceded him. He couldn't even blame her disbelief. When Hiruzen Sarutobi became Hokage, he established a rule: Jonin must mentor 3 graduates from the Ninja Academy to strengthen Konoha's overall skill level. Jiraiya, Tsunade, and Orochimaru had been chosen by Sarutobi to form a 3-person squad after graduating from the academy. 3 days ago, while training under Sarutobi, Danzo had brought his students to their training grounds, proposing a friendly spar between the teams. Sarutobi had agreed, scheduling the match for tomorrow. Looking at you, I bet you're not ready, Tsunade said bluntly, folding her arms. Listen, Jiraiya, you better not lose too badly tomorrow. If you embarrass us, I'll make sure you regret it. Before Jiraiya could respond, she clenched her fist in warning. It was clear she had little faith in his ability to win. Does she really think I'm that weak? Jiraiya thought, exasperated. Tsunade, how about we make a bet? Jiraiya suggested with a sly grin. If I win tomorrow, you'll grant me one request. Deal? Tsunade raised an eyebrow, then smirked. If you actually win, I'll grant you 3 requests. But if you lose badly, you'll wish you hadn't. Jiraiya grinned, confident in his newfound power. With the sage body, he was sure he wouldn't lose to Danzo's Chunin-level students. Watching Tsunade leave, Jiraiya chuckled to himself. First small goal: win the bet and get Tsunade to clean the training grounds. He glanced at the broken gate pieces on the ground and sighed. I really hope I can unlock the wood release Kekii Genkai someday. Fixing gates would be so much easier. Chapter 3 Truth through practice. After Tsunade left, Jiraiya didn't bother fixing the door. He planned to leave that to her. He was absolutely confident about defeating Danzo's disciple tomorrow. Besides, Tsunade had promised that if he won, she'd agree to several of his demands. Fixing the door? That would be just one of them, a fitting lesson for her to experience the trouble firsthand. Returning to his house, Jiraiya made his way to the room where his parents' belongings were stored. When he opened the door, he was slightly surprised. The room was pristine, everything neatly organized and free of dust, a stark contrast to the chaotic training grounds outside. The photos displayed on one cabinet, in particular, gleamed as if they'd been meticulously polished. Jiraiya sighed softly. No matter the world, war always left endless pain in its wake. Without war, he believed, those photographs wouldn't have been so obsessively clean. They were the only remnants of the past he could hold on to. Walking up to the cabinet, he pulled it open to reveal a locked metal box. The lock was unique, square-shaped with a circular keyhole. From his inherited memories, Jiraiya knew this box contained the ninja technique scrolls his parents had left behind. Placing the box on the ground, he took off the pendant hanging around his neck. The pendant was a crimson orb, crafted from some unknown gemstone. He inserted the orb into the lock's circular slot. Click! A crisp sound echoed as the lock rotated and fell away. Jiraiya carefully opened the box, revealing around 20 scrolls inside. For the next half hour, he meticulously examined each one. Not a single S-rank technique. This wasn't surprising, given that Jiraiya's parents weren't prominent ninjas in Konoha, nor were they from any major clan. It was only natural they hadn't left behind anything of that caliber. Among the scrolls, there was just one A-rank technique. Unfortunately, it was a lightning release jutsu, and since Jiraiya didn't have lightning nature chakra, he couldn't train in it. The remaining scrolls were mostly B-rank and C-rank techniques. After some thought, Jiraiya selected two B-rank jutsu: Earth Release, Earth-style Wall, and Wind Release, Wind Web. The Earth-style Wall was a defensive technique that needed no introduction. It was widely practiced among Earth-natured ninjas for its impressive defensive capabilities and immense potential. In fact, many A-rank defensive Earth Release techniques were derived from this one. Even Sarutobi Hiruzen and Kakashi were known to use it. Kakashi, in particular, had a signature move of adding a dog's face to the wall whenever he cast it. For Jiraiya, lacking strong defensive techniques, mastering the Earth-style Wall was an obvious choice. The Wind Web, on the other hand, wasn't a defensive or offensive jutsu, it was a sensory technique. It involved refining chakra into fine wind threads that formed an invisible web around the user. Any ninja who stepped into the web would be instantly detected. Jiraiya chose to train in this technique because sensory abilities were crucial in battles. The Hyuga clan, for example, had built their fame in the ninja world through their unparalleled Byakugan. With its incredible perception, the Byakugan could track chakra flow in the environment, see through objects, and even pinpoint an opponent's chakra network in Tenketsu. In combat, if two ninjas were evenly matched, a Hyuga could secure victory simply by closing the distance. The Byakugan's ability to magnify vision and scan an area of up to a kilometer made it far superior to the Sharingan in terms of raw perception. During the First Great Ninja War, the other villages were deeply wary of Konoha's Hyuga clan for precisely this reason. Since Jiraiya didn't possess a Kekkai Genkai like the Byakugan, he had to rely on sensory techniques like the Wind Web to enhance his combat awareness. Really, though, leaving so many useful techniques untouched just to spend all day peeping at women's bathhouses? What was the old me even thinking? Jiraiya muttered, shaking his head. Still, he couldn't help but wonder what made the bathhouses so alluring. Someday, when he had time, he'd have to sneak a look himself to satisfy his curiosity, of course. After all, only through first-hand experience could he truly understand the appeal. His reputation was already in shambles, so a few more incidents wouldn't make much difference. He swore it wasn't about spying on women, it was purely academic interest in what made the bathhouses in the ninja world so unique. Setting aside his thoughts, Jiraiya decided to start with the Earth-style Wall. Defensive techniques were indispensable in combat. The scroll described two methods to cast the jutsu. The first involved gathering Earth nature chakra in the mouth and spitting it out to form the wall. This method was superior, as it allowed the jutsu to be cast even without direct contact with the ground. The more chakra gathered, the stronger the wall. The second method required channeling chakra directly into the earth to form the wall, but it was more restrictive since it required physical contact with the ground. The first method was significantly harder to master. In the original Naruto series, only the third Hokage was shown to use it during his fight with Orochimaru. Most other ninjas, including Kakashi, relied on the second method. After some thought, Jiraiya decided to start with the second method. Once he mastered it, transitioning to the first would be much easier. With his decision made, Jiraiya grabbed the scroll and headed to his training room. The chakra flow for the Earth-style Wall was somewhat similar to that of the Earth Release Swamp of the Underworld, which gave Jiraiya an edge in mastering it. Thanks to his specialized training in hand seals from the system, Jiraiya was confident he'd master the technique by tomorrow. His sage body provided him with vast reserves of chakra, so he didn't need to worry about running out mid-training. Immersed in his practice, Jiraiya lost track of time. Before he knew it, night had fallen. Earth Release, Earth-style Wall. Standing in the center of his training grounds, Jiraiya shouted as his hands moved swiftly to form the seals. With a powerful slap to the ground, the earth before him trembled and rose, forming a half-meter-tall wall. Chapter 4 underestimated. The earthen wall rose only half a meter before halting abruptly. Jiraiya frowned, stopping his chakra flow, and the wall crumbled instantly into a pile of dirt. After a full day of grueling practice, he had managed to execute the Earth Release Earth-style Wall technique, but he wasn't pleased. The wall rose too slowly, making it practically useless in combat. If he were in an actual battle, the enemy's attack would have landed before his wall even formed. The chakra concentration is still too scattered, Jiraiya muttered under his breath, replaying the technique in his mind. The issue wasn't his hand seal speed, he was confident about that. The problem had to be in how he guided his chakra. Even though mastering a B-rank jutsu within a single day was an impressive feat, Jiraiya wasn't satisfied. He resumed his training, determined to perfect it. Earth release, earth-style wall. By 1 a.m., Jiraiya clapped his hands on the ground. A surge of earth chakra flowed into the ground, gathering in one place, and within the blink of an eye, a 1-meter-high wall rose before him. Finally! Jiraiya exclaimed with relief. With this, he felt confident that he wouldn't have any glaring weaknesses in tomorrow's match. His wall now rose fast enough to block any attack provided the enemy wasn't using space-time ninjutsu. Even if the wall couldn't fully absorb an attack, it would at least buy him time to evade. His stomach growled loudly. After training all day without eating, Jiraiya was famished. If it weren't for the boost provided by his sage body, he wouldn't have lasted this long. Leaving the training ground, he headed to the pond in the courtyard, grabbed a nearby fishing net, and scooped up a catch. The pond was stocked with plenty of fish, his primary food source. Before his reincarnation, Jiraiya had been an accomplished cook. Grabbing the kitchen tools, he quickly prepped the fish and tossed it into the pan. In no time, he had whipped up a fragrant plate of sweet and sour fish and devoured it at lightning speed. That hit the spot, Jiraiya sighed contentedly before flopping onto the wooden floor and falling asleep. Jiraiya, you idiot. You're still sleeping? You're driving me crazy. A furious shout jolted Jiraiya awake. He shot upright and found himself face to face with an enraged Tsunade. Where did you sneak off to last night to peep again? She bellowed. If not for the sparring match scheduled for noon, Tsunade would have already sent him flying with a punch. Tsunade, calm down. I overslept because I was training until late last night. Jiraiya stammered, frantically trying to explain. He glanced at the clock. 8 a.m. He had slept in way too late. Do you really expect me to believe that excuse? Tsunade's voice dripped with anger. Don't let him get to you, Tsunade, or we'll be late. A young man in a white shinobi uniform, with piercing serpent-like eyes, entered the room. It was their teammate, Orochimaru. Jiraiya, Tsunade warned, her voice icy, if you lose miserably today, I'll make sure you can't walk for a year. With that threat, she stormed off in a huff. Jiraiya turned to Orochimaru with a sheepish grin. Thanks for covering for me, Orochimaru. At this point, Orochimaru hadn't yet become the infamous traitor. Despite his cold and aloof nature, he treated his teammates fairly well. In fact, he had once even agreed to help Jiraiya stage a rescue to impress Tsunade, only for both of them to end up beaten black and blue by her. Orochimaru's descent into darkness began after the Second Shinobi War. Witnessing the fragility of life, he became obsessed with immortality, leading him down the path of forbidden jutsu. While his pursuit of knowledge wasn't inherently wrong, his methods such as experimenting on fellow shinobi were unforgivable. I'm not doing this for you, Orochimaru said flatly. I just don't want to waste time. He added, Tsunade's strength isn't something to take lightly. Don't provoke her unnecessarily, or you'll regret it. And remember, Danzo's 3 disciples are stronger than you. Don't push yourself too hard, you can always forfeit. Though his words were harsh, there was a hint of concern in Orochimaru's tone. Having grown up as a war orphan, his only true friends were Jiraiya and Tsunade. Jiraiya, however, puffed up his chest. Orochimaru, don't underestimate me. One day, I'll be the legendary Jiraiya, known throughout the ninja world. Pretend I didn't say anything, Orochimaru muttered, rolling his eyes as he walked off. Feeling slightly embarrassed, Jiraiya resolved to prove himself in today's match. Let's grab some ramen before heading to the match, Tsunade suggested. I'm in, Jiraiya said eagerly. No objections here, Orochimaru added. Besides, whenever they ate out, Tsunade always paid the bill. Being from one of Konoha's wealthiest clans, she could afford it. At the ramen shop, Tsunade ordered 3 large bowls. Orochimaru, are you confident about today's match? Tsunade asked as they waited for their food. Do you think I'll lose? Orochimaru replied coolly. Jiraiya couldn't help but notice how composed Orochimaru was, even at this stage. Good point. You're definitely stronger than Jiraiya, Tsunade quipped, taking the opportunity to jab at Jiraiya. Jiraiya sighed. If there was one thing consistent in his life, it was how much his teammates underestimated him. But today, he would show them all. Chapter 5, Should I be nervous? Unfairly criticized, Jiraiya remained silent. At the moment, he was pondering how to restore his image in Tsunade's eyes. There was still some time before she would meet Dan Kato. If he wanted to stop her from falling for Dan, he'd have to change her opinion of him. Jiraiya, we graduated from the academy at the same time and trained under the same teacher. So why is there such a huge gap between you and Orochimaru? Tsunade didn't hesitate to aim her criticism at Jiraiya again. Orochimaru's the genius sensei always talks about. Of course, there's going to be a gap between us, Jiraiya replied, this time deciding not to bicker with Tsunade and instead going along with her words. Orochimaru glanced at Jiraiya, surprised. He hadn't expected such self-awareness from him. Usually, whenever Tsunade or Hiruzen Sarutobi praised Orochimaru, Jiraiya would grumble in frustration, loudly proclaiming he would surpass him one day. Has Jiraiya already been on the receiving end of Tsunade's punches? Looks like I'll have to watch my words from now on. I definitely don't want her fists landing on me, Orochimaru thought to himself, imagining that Jiraiya's sudden change of attitude must be because Tsunade had beaten him into submission. If you're aware of the gap, why don't you train harder? Tsunade pressed on. If hard work alone could surpass a genius, what would be the point of being a genius? Jiraiya shot back. You'll see after today's sparring match who the real genius is. I'm looking forward to your performance today, Orochimaru remarked coolly. Orochimaru, if you want to see Jiraiya get beaten, just say so. Why play coy? Honestly, I'm pretty curious to see it too, Tsunade teased. Jiraiya felt another wave of exasperation. He slammed the table and said, "You'll both be disappointed, I guarantee it. Your ramen is ready," the server announced as bowls of steaming noodles were brought to their table. "This is delicious," Jiraiya exclaimed after taking a bite. While it wasn't as good as Ichiraku ramen, the flavor was still excellent. After finishing their meal, Tsunade paid the bill, and the three headed toward the training grounds behind the Hokage Tower. Their teacher, Hiruzen Sarutobi the third Hokage, was waiting for them. Though not in his Hokage robes, his presence was commanding. He stood there puffing on his pipe. "Good morning, sensei," they greeted him respectfully. Sarutobi nodded slightly. He was in his prime, exuding an aura of authority. "For today's sparring matches, you don't need to win, but you absolutely cannot get injured. Understood?" Sarutobi instructed. "Understood, sensei," the three responded in unison. "Jiraiya, are you nervous about the upcoming spar?" Sarutobi asked, glancing at him. "Not at all, sensei," Jiraiya replied confidently. "You're not nervous?" Sarutobi asked, clearly surprised. "Should I be nervous?" Jiraiya asked, puzzled by Sarutobi's reaction. "With your skill level, you're bound to get beaten pretty badly. Isn't that worth worrying about?" Sarutobi teased. Jiraiya was speechless for a moment before responding, "Sensei, this level of sparring? I'll be the one doing the beating. You just wait, I'll surprise you. That's the spirit. If you can last 3 minutes without losing, I'll teach you the water release, water mirror technique," Sarutobi said with a puff of smoke. The water mirror technique was a sensory-type jutsu that required water to perform. By channeling chakra into water, the user could create a mirror-like surface that reflected images within the water. It was a highly situational technique but invaluable for reconnaissance. Sarutobi, renowned for his mastery of sensory jutsu, often used such techniques for surveillance, even after becoming Hokage. His infamous crystal ball jutsu allowed him to monitor Konoha's ninjas, uncovering any who harbored ill intentions toward the village. Those individuals often disappeared the next day, courtesy of the Umbu. "Sensei, Jiraiya is already notorious as a huge pervert. If you teach him that jutsu, who's going to feel safe bathing anymore?" Tsunade interjected, clearly alarmed. "Tsunade, why are you so worked up? Do you really think Jiraiya can last 3 minutes?" Orochimaru asked dryly. "Not with his current skills. He'll be down in under a minute," Tsunade scoffed. "Then why are you so worried?" Orochimaru pressed. "Good point," Tsunade admitted, nodding. Jiraiya was speechless yet again. "Just wait, I'll blow all of your minds. Sensei, Elder Danzo and his students won't arrive for a while. Could you teach us a new jutsu in the meantime?" Orochimaru suggested, his ambition showing. "I appreciate your eagerness, Orochimaru, but if I teach you something now, you might lose focus during the spar. Let's save it for after the matches," Sarutobi replied, pleased with Orochimaru's initiative. Among his 3 students, Sarutobi was most impressed with Orochimaru. He already considered him the most likely candidate to succeed him as Hokage, viewing him as a rare genius. If Orochimaru hadn't defected later, he would have been a strong contender for the 4th Hokage's position. During Orochimaru's defection, Sarutobi, at the peak of his strength, could have easily killed him but ultimately couldn't bring himself to do so. "Orochimaru, have you learned any new jutsu recently?" Sarutobi asked, taking another puff of his pipe. "Yes, sensei. I've mastered a family B-rank jutsu," Orochimaru replied. Orochimaru's clan, though once prominent, had been nearly wiped out during the First Great Ninja War, leaving him as the sole survivor. The family techniques, however, remained a legacy only he could carry forward. Chapter 6, Can you not use me as an example? The jutsu Orochimaru had mastered were mostly family secrets. Across the entire Naruto world, only Orochimaru and his disciple, Mitarashi Anko, were known to use snakes. No other ninjas seemed to possess such techniques. "Show me what it can do," Sarutobi Hiruzen said, gesturing toward the training field. Orochimaru nodded, fixing his gaze on a wooden training post in the field. His hands began weaving signs at lightning speed. Jiraiya immediately sensed the chakra within Orochimaru shifting, converging toward his wrists. Evil snake arm burst. With a sharp flick of his sleeve, 2 massive pythons shot out, striking the wooden post with terrifying speed and coiling tightly around it. The snakes moved so fast that Jiraiya could only catch a blur. Such dense chakra. He could feel the immense energy radiating from the 2 serpents. Orochimaru quickly formed another set of hand seals. Jiraiya sensed the chakra within the pythons pooling in one spot. Moments later, a deafening explosion shattered the post, leaving nothing but splinters. The blast carved deep craters into the ground, while black liquid splattered around the area. Where it landed, thick, purple smoke hissed into the air. "What an incredible jutsu," Tsunade remarked, her voice filled with admiration. Jiraiya nodded in agreement. Orochimaru's technique was undeniably powerful, swift, devastating, and laced with venom. If an enemy were caught in the serpent's coils, even if they survived the explosion, the poison would severely weaken them. The only drawback was the preparation time. Orochimaru's chakra buildup was conspicuous, making it easy for enemies to detect and prepare a counterattack. However, this was an issue that would naturally diminish as he became more proficient with the jutsu. A very impressive technique, Hiruzen praised. With this, you won't lose in the upcoming competition. The Hokage offered a word of caution. The only thing to watch for is how obvious your chakra flow becomes during the hand seals. Even Jiraiya could sense it. In combat, you should aim to use this technique from the shadows, but that's a minor issue. As you master the jutsu, it will improve. Teacher, could you not use me as an example? Jiraiya protested, throwing up his hands. I have some pride, you know. If you cared about pride, you wouldn't spend so much time peeping at the women's bathhouses, Tsunade retorted, landing a verbal jab. Jiraiya sighed in defeat. Redeeming his image was clearly a lost cause. To clear the lingering poison smoke, Orochimaru swiftly wove another set of seals. Wind release, great breakthrough. He exhaled a powerful gust of wind that swept the smoke away, leaving the area pristine once more. Great breakthrough was a basic wind release jutsu that most wind chakra users learned due to its simplicity and considerable power. Orochimaru hadn't shown its full potential just now, but it was effective nonetheless. Not long after, Danzo appeared at the training field, accompanied by 3 of his disciples. The bandage over Danzo's eye immediately drew Jiraiya's scorn. He loathed the man, knowing the truth behind the eye hidden beneath the bandages. It had been stolen from their teammate, Uchiha Kagami. Danzo and Hiruzen shared a deep distrust of the Uchiha clan, a bias inherited from the second Hokage. While this mistrust didn't justify Danzo's actions, it explained them. During a retreat, Danzo had ambushed Kagami, killing him to steal his Sharingan. Hiruzen was fully aware of Danzo's treachery but had chosen not to punish him. Instead, he had appointed Danzo as his assistant, granting him significant authority. Hiruzen understood that the Hokage couldn't afford to tarnish his reputation. For the village's dirty work, someone else had to step into the shadows. Danzo, ruthless and pragmatic, was the perfect candidate. This reasoning also explained why Hiruzen allowed Danzo to form Root, a covered extension of the Umbu. Though some claimed that Danzo's actions were always for the good of Konoha, Jiraiya disagreed. When pain attacked the village, Danzo had remained in hiding, prioritizing his ambition to become Hokage over the lives of his comrades. That alone, in Jiraiya's eyes, made Danzo irredeemable. Strictly speaking, Danzo was a pitiful figure. After finally becoming acting Hokage, he was killed by Sasuke shortly afterward. In life, he had also taken on many of Hiruzen's burdens, serving as the scapegoat for countless dark deeds that had been quietly sanctioned by the third Hokage. Greetings, Lord Hokage. Danzo and his 3 disciples bowed respectfully. In Konoha, the Hokage was a figure of reverence, and all shinobi treated the title with utmost respect. Hiruzen acknowledged them with a nod. Jiraiya turned his attention to Danzo's disciples Abarame Ryoma, Yamanaka Ikii, and Akimichi Sanzen. Danzo's students hailed from prominent clans. The Abarame, Yamanaka, and Akimichi clans were among Konoha's founding families, with long-standing histories and significant contributions during the First Great Ninja War. Abarame Ryoma, in particular, was renowned. After becoming a jonin, he had joined the Umbu, where his exceptional infiltration skills earned Konoha critical intelligence. When Danzo founded Root, Ryoma became his right-hand man, enjoying the elder's utmost trust. The other 2 disciples, however, were relatively obscure figures, and Jiraiya couldn't recall hearing much about them. Lord Hokage, when shall we begin the competition? Danzo asked respectfully, concealing his inner envy toward Hiruzen's position. Though jealousy burned in Danzo's heart, he revered the office of Hokage as sacred and treated Hiruzen with outward respect. Chapter 7 The duel begins in his old age. Danzo ordered Kakashi and Yamato to assassinate the equally aging Hiruzen Sarutobi. It wasn't merely a matter of politics, it was Danzo's obsession with becoming Hokage that had plunged him into darkness. He could not bear the thought of Hiruzen reclaiming the Hokage title, driving him to take such extreme measures. By that time, Danzo had descended into madness, his ambition utterly consuming him. But the Danzo of today still respected Hiruzen deeply. Under Hiruzen's leadership, Konohagakure had begun to thrive once again. We can start the draw now, Hiruzen said, taking a puff from his pipe. I'm eager to see how capable your students truly are. You proposed this duel, so you must have confidence in their abilities. My teaching skills pale in comparison to yours, Danzo replied humbly. I suggested this duel only to help them understand the gaps in their strength, to better motivate their training. Hiruzen chuckled lightly. Danzo, with my daily workload, I hardly have time to guide them. Who knows? I might embarrass myself today. Danzo didn't respond, instead turning to Jiraiya and the others. You're already aware of the duel's purpose, so I won't repeat myself. I will emphasize one thing, during the duel, you are free to use any ninja tools or techniques. There are no restrictions. When the match begins, treat your opponent as a real enemy. Show no mercy. Don't worry about accidentally killing your opponent. Both the Hokage and I will ensure that things don't get out of hand. Your only focus should be on defeating your opponent as swiftly as possible. Understood? Jiraiya nodded, appreciating Danzo's uncompromising tone. After all, real combat experience couldn't be gained if they held back. Understood, sensei. Understood. Good. The duel will take place across the entire training ground. You're free to fight however you like, as long as you stay within its boundaries. Now, come forward one by one and draw your match number. Danzo held out 2 sets of wooden sticks. Students from Abarame Ryoma's group drew from his right hand, while Jiraiya's group drew from his left. When When Jiraiya looked at his stick, he saw the number 1 etched into it. First match, huh? Perfect. He'd had the chance to stun Tsunade and the others early on. Jiraiya glanced at Ryoma's group, wondering which of them would be unlucky enough to draw number 1 and face him. You've all drawn your match numbers, Danzo announced. The duel begins with number 1. Step forward if you drew it. Jiraiya stepped forward confidently, holding up his stick. Opposite him, Abarame Ryoma also stepped forward. Seeing his opponent, Jiraiya groaned inwardly. Of all Danzo's students, Ryoma was the strongest and the one he least wanted to face. It wasn't fear. Ryoma's abilities simply made him an exceptionally tricky opponent. As a member of the Abarame clan, Ryoma's techniques relied entirely on controlling insects bred within his body. Fighting him would require careful strategy and plenty of patience. The two walked to the center of the training ground. Unlucky Jiraiya, going up against Ryoma, Hiruzen said with a chuckle. He won't last a minute. Should we take bets on how long it takes him to cry out and surrender? Teacher, that's hardly a contest, Tsunade quipped. Once Jiraiya experiences Ryoma's techniques, he'll give up immediately. I agree, Orochimaru added with a smirk. Jiraiya, you don't stand a chance, Ryoma said coldly. Save us both some time and surrender now. Jiraiya, often mocked as the underdog, was unsurprised. But he wasn't about to let Ryoma's arrogance slide. Talk to me like that, and you'll regret it, Jiraiya retorted. How boring, Ryoma replied dismissively. Watching their exchange, Danzo's lip twitched slightly. Begin, he declared. Ryoma vanished instantly, using the body flicker technique to retreat into the forested area of the training ground. This vast field featured diverse terrains, woods, streams, and even hills designed for all types of ninjutsu training. Ryoma's first move was textbook for the Abarame clan. Their ninja relied on stealth and insect manipulation, avoiding close combat at all costs. Once hidden, they controlled their insects to attack from the shadows, maintaining a tactical advantage. Now hidden among the trees, Ryoma was effectively invisible. His insects masked his chakra signature, making it nearly impossible for Jiraiya to pinpoint his location. Jiraiya, undeterred, leapt into the forest himself. Without sensory ninjutsu, his only option was to close the distance and wait for Ryoma to strike. The moment Ryoma used chakra to command his insects, he would reveal his position however briefly. Jiraiya knew it wouldn't be easy, but he relished the challenge. Chapter 8 Showcasing skills. What the hell is Jiraiya thinking? Why would he run straight into the forest like that? Is he deliberately making himself a target? Tsunade clenched her fists again as she watched Jiraiya's actions. To her, entering the forest was a death wish. In such an environment, it would be nearly impossible to evade attacks, especially against the Abarame clan's insects. Their small size and the forest's abundant cover made them exceptionally hard to detect and counter. Every leaf could be hiding an insect ready to strike. This is the right move for Jiraiya, Hiruzen Sarutobi said, his sharp eyes immediately understanding Jiraiya's intent. He doesn't have any sensory techniques. His best chance is to close the distance and observe Ryoma as he casts a jutsu. That way, he might sense him and counterattack, forcing Ryoma into the open. It's the only way he has even a sliver of a chance to win. I thought Jiraiya would just give up, Orochimaru remarked, a rare note of surprise in his voice. I didn't expect him to actually fight back. Maybe he'll surprise us, Hiruzen added, a hint of anticipation in his tone. What kind of surprise could he possibly give us? Tsunade snorted dismissively. Whiz. Whiz. No sooner had Jiraiya entered the forest than two kunai gleaming with cold light flew straight toward him. Reacting quickly, Jiraiya drew the shuriken hanging at his waist and slashed at the incoming weapons. Clang! A sharp metallic sound echoed as the kunai were deflected, falling harmlessly to the ground. Standing on a sturdy tree branch, Jiraiya scanned his surroundings but found no trace of Ryoma. The dense foliage obscured his vision, making it almost impossible to see far. I didn't expect him to have the guts to follow me in here, Ryoma muttered, crouching beneath a layer of fallen leaves. Covered by a swarm of gray insects masking his presence, Ryoma lay hidden, watching Jiraiya's every move. From his sleeve, a group of black insects with translucent wings emerged and silently burrowed into the forest floor, crawling toward Jiraiya's position without making a sound. Not having any sensory jutsu is a real pain, Jiraiya thought, leaping from tree to tree, his eyes constantly searching for any sign of Ryoma. If he had wind-released windweb, this wouldn't be such a blind pursuit. The insects moved quickly, keeping pace with Jiraiya despite his rapid movements. Just as Jiraiya leapt from one tree to another, Ryoma formed hand seals at lightning speed. Ninja art, insect rope. The insects lurking beneath the leaves suddenly took flight, their wings buzzing as they surged upward. Chakra threads connected them, weaving into a thin, flexible rope that shot toward Jiraiya mid-air, wrapping tightly around him. Caught in mid-leap, Jiraiya couldn't dodge. The timing of Ryoma's attack was flawless, leaving Jiraiya no room to maneuver. The insect rope coiled around Jiraiya, binding his arms and body. Unable to form hand seals, he plummeted to the ground. The insects crawled all over him, tightening the rope until he was completely immobilized. Once a ninja loses the ability to form seals, they're no different from a regular person, Ryoma said quietly, a smirk of victory on his face. But in the next instant, his expression froze in shock. The Jiraiya he had trapped vanished in a puff of smoke. It was just a shadow clone. What? When did this happen? Ryoma's eyes widened in disbelief. His insects had been monitoring Jiraiya the entire time. How could he have missed the substitution? Sensei, when did Jiraiya use a shadow clone? Tsunade asked, equally baffled. Hiruzen smiled faintly. He used it the moment he entered the forest. What you've been watching all this time was never his real body, it was the clone. When Jiraiya first entered the forest, he'd quickly assessed the situation. Surrounded by trees, he had used a shadow clone and hidden his real body behind a trunk. Unlike the Hyuga clan, the Abarame didn't have the Byakugan's near-omniscient sight, which allowed Jiraiya to remain undetected. Sensei, Jiraiya had less than a second in that blind spot to execute the shadow clone jutsu. Are you saying he performed it that quickly? Orochimaru asked, his face unusually serious. That's correct, Hiruzen confirmed. Jiraiya used the shadow clone jutsu in that fleeting moment. It was a remarkable display of speed and precision, even for me. Tsunade frowned, still skeptical. Are you sure? When we trained together, Jiraiya couldn't even get the hand seals right. And now you're telling me he can execute the technique in less than a second? This is harder to believe than Jiraiya going a week without peeping at the women's bathhouse, she muttered. It's hard to believe, but he did it, Danzo said, stepping forward, his tone equally astonished. Meanwhile, the real Jiraiya had already closed the distance to Ryoma. Sensing the chakra disturbance from the insect rope, he had used the body flicker technique to get closer. As he moved, his hands blurred through a series of seals. Fire style, flame bullet. A searing fireball shot from Jiraiya's mouth, blazing toward Ryoma with intense heat. Chapter 9, the Abarame clan's jutsu. The fire roared through the air, igniting every leaf in its path. Jiraiya hadn't used his full power when launching the fire release, flame bullet. Instead, he released just one flame bullet, intending to mislead Ryoma about his true strength. This way, in the battles to come, Jiraiya could gain an advantage and defeat Ryoma more effectively. In ninja combat, strategies often play a decisive role. A clever plan can allow a weaker ninja to defeat a far stronger opponent. Among Chunin, most who could use the fire release, flame bullet were limited to producing just one flame bullet at a time. Ryoma would never suspect that Jiraiya could simultaneously unleash three. That would be a surprise he'd reveal soon enough. The moment Ryoma realized the one bound by his jutsu was only Jiraiya's clone, he understood his position was exposed. Without hesitation, he prepared his defensive jutsu, insect release, insect wall. As the flame bullet approached, a swarm of black beetles flew out from Ryoma's body. They gathered rapidly, forming a thick, black barrier. From a distance, it resembled a massive shield. This technique, one of the Abarame clan's staples, relied entirely on the user's control over their insects to determine its defensive strength. Boom! The flame bullet struck the insect wall, erupting in a deafening explosion. Sparks flew in all directions, and the air immediately filled with the acrid stench of burning. Nearly half of the black beetles forming the wall were incinerated, their charred remains falling to the ground. Ryoma winced at the sight, his heart aching. Breeding and nurturing his insects was no simple task. After blocking the flame bullet, Ryoma immediately activated the body flicker technique, retreating deeper into the forest in an attempt to hide once more. But Jiraiya wasn't about to let him escape again. Activating the body flicker technique himself, he pursued Ryoma and threw 3 shuriken at his fleeing back. Ryoma, in turn, flung 3 of his own shuriken to intercept. The metallic clang of collisions echoed as the shuriken fell to the ground. Ordinary shuriken lacked the power to cause significant harm unless used in overwhelming numbers. Only shuriken forged from special chakra-conducting metals held immense destructive potential, but such weapons were incredibly rare and difficult to obtain. Insect release, insect rope. As Jiraiya closed in, Ryoma released another swarm of winged insects. The bugs rapidly coalesced into a writhing rope, lunging toward Jiraiya to ensnare him. Jiraiya hurled several shuriken at the approaching insect rope. However, the rope's agility and the insect's speed allowed it to evade the projectiles with ease. The buzzing grew louder as the rope closed the distance to Jiraiya. What a nuisance! Jiraiya quickly formed hand seals, unleashing another fire release, flame bullet. The searing fireball shot forward, radiating intense heat. Before the fireball could reach the insect rope, the bugs let out sharp, crackling sounds and fell lifelessly to the ground. Fire release was a natural counter to insect release techniques, as most insects were highly vulnerable to heat. Though the insect rope's speed was impressive, its defensive capabilities were far inferior to the black beetles of the insect wall. It was far too fragile. With just one flame bullet, Jiraiya annihilated the entire swarm. Sensei, is it just me, or does Jiraiya's flame bullet seem much stronger than before? Observing the battle from a distance, Tsunade frowned and voiced her doubts. She had sparred with Jiraiya in the past and was familiar with the power of his flame bullet. During one of their previous bouts, she'd even shattered Jiraiya's flame bullet with a single punch, emerging unscathed. But now, the flame bullet's power seemed far greater. You're not mistaken, Hiruzen Sarutobi confirmed with a nod. Jiraiya's flame bullet now contains far more concentrated chakra. In future matches with him, you mustn't rely solely on your fists, it could result in serious burns. Sarutobi's eyes sparkled with anticipation as he observed Jiraiya. He had initially taken Jiraiya as a disciple for political reasons. Jiraiya, an orphan from a civilian family whose parents had died in the war, served as a symbol to inspire and rally support among the lower-ranking ninja. If not for these considerations, Sarutobi would never have chosen Jiraiya as a pupil. In fact, he'd been close to giving up on him due to Jiraiya's apparent lack of talent. In truth, Sarutobi's only genuine choice for a disciple had been Orochimaru. His decision to mentor Tsunade was similarly driven by political motives to strengthen ties with the Senju clan and counterbalance the Uchiha clan. Was he just pretending to be weak all this time? Orochimaru murmured, his golden eyes narrowing as he watched Jiraiya's sudden surge in power. You won't escape from me again. Jiraiya bellowed, unleashing another barrage of flame bullets toward Ryoma. Thanks to his sage body, Jiraiya's chakra reserves allowed him to sustain such attacks without fear of depletion. Ryoma, however, didn't have an endless supply of insects. Eventually, he'd run out. As the number of black beetles around Ryoma dwindled, he realized he couldn't shake off Jiraiya. Leaping onto a tree branch, he swiftly turned and released 3 peculiar insects. These insects, resembling small spheres with 4 pairs of translucent, razor-like wings, exuded an ominous aura. Insect release, insect slash. With a loud cry, Ryoma formed hand seals, and the 3 insects surged with chakra. They expanded rapidly, growing to the size of a palm, their wings buzzing with lethal energy. Wind chakra coated their razor-like wings, enhancing their sharpness. The insects' flight created trails of slicing wind blades that severed everything in their path. Trees fell in an instant, cleanly sliced by the invisible force. These creatures, known as wind cutter bugs, were a rare and deadly breed cultivated by the Aberame clan. Infused with wind chakra, they could augment a variety of wind release techniques. Fire release, flame bullet. Without hesitation, Jiraiya unleashed another flame bullet. The fireball roared toward the 3 advancing insects. However, before the flames could reach their targets, the wind blades emitted by the insects sliced through the fireball, dispersing it entirely. Chapter 10, Who spread the rumors? What a remarkable insect, Jiraiya muttered, his eyes narrowing. Although the fireball hadn't gotten close to the insect before being sliced apart and dissipating, the intense heat it radiated should have been enough for the creature to sense it. Yet, it seemed utterly unaffected. Leaping toward the ground, Jiraiya knew that for techniques of this caliber, he would need a specialized defensive jutsu to counter them. The only defensive jutsu he currently had was Earth Release, Earth-style wall, which required contact with the ground to perform. He still hadn't mastered the ability to condense Earth chakra directly in his mouth. Earth Release, Earth-style wall. Mid-descent, Jiraiya formed the seals and slammed his hands onto the ground upon landing. A sturdy wall of earth instantly rose before him. Boom! A series of explosions erupted near his ears as 3 insects, accompanied by a barrage of wind blades, struck the wall head-on. The wall shuddered violently under the assault, sending dirt and fragments flying, but it held firm, no cracks formed, and it continued to withstand Ryoma's attack. When did Jiraiya learn Earth-style wall? Tsunade exclaimed in shock. And he's using it so skillfully. If he'd known this technique earlier, he would have definitely bragged about it to us. Did he just master it recently? She glanced at Jiraiya with a mixture of surprise and unease. Somehow, he felt unfamiliar to her now. It's possible he's been hiding his true strength, Orochimaru speculated, equally stunned. With his personality? That seems unlikely, Tsunade countered. She remembered how Jiraiya would always flaunt any new technique he learned, often showing off jutsu that she and Orochimaru had already mastered long ago. The idea that Jiraiya had been concealing his abilities seemed hard to believe. Maybe his talent has only recently begun to shine, Orochimaru mused, observing Jiraiya's performance with an air of satisfaction. Nearby, Danzo's expression darkened. Ryoma was his most prized disciple, someone he had high hopes for. Based on his observations, Ryoma should have been capable of defeating both Tsunade and Jiraiya. That confidence had driven him to propose this match to Hiruzen Sarutobi, hoping to surpass his rival in this arena. But from the looks of it, Ryoma was struggling even to keep up with Jiraiya. You think a simple trick like this can block my jutsu? Don't underestimate me, Ryoma sneered. Forming hand seals, he directed his 2 remaining insects to gather their chakra into a single point. The chakra compressed rapidly before detonating with a deafening roar, unleashing a storm of wind blades that tore into the earthen wall. This jutsu was Ryoma's most powerful technique, a B-rank jutsu with power at the peak of its class. Crack! The wall fractured, a web of cracks spreading across its surface before it began to collapse. One of the insects that hadn't exploded darted through the crumbling wall, striking Jiraiya, followed by a flurry of wind blades. But before Ryoma could celebrate, he realized something was off. Jiraiya's body turned into a puddle of mud. A substitution. When did he pull that off? Ryoma's eyes widened in disbelief. He had struck Jiraiya the moment the wall fell, but somehow, Jiraiya had already replaced himself with a clone. As Ryoma suspected, Jiraiya had executed the substitution jutsu in that fleeting moment. He had already moved aside, leaving only a decoy in his place. What incredible speed, Tsunade muttered, having caught a glimpse of Jiraiya's quick hand seals. Who the hell started that rumor about Jiraiya being dead last? Ryoma cursed inwardly. There was no way someone this skilled could ever be called a loser. If Jiraiya was trash, then what were the rest of them? Ryoma's face burned with embarrassment as he recalled his earlier taunts. Fire release, flame bullet. Jiraiya formed hand seals and unleashed a fireball toward the final insect. By now, the insect's chakra reserves were nearly depleted, its wings too weak to generate wind blades. The fireball hit its mark, coating the insect in burning chakra-infused oil. The insect let out a sharp screech as the flames consumed it. Though the fireball hadn't killed it instantly, the burning oil ensured its demise. Within moments, the creature fell silent. Ryoma winced in pain. He had only 3 of those insects, and now they were all gone. They weren't something he could breed himself, acquiring them required passing rigorous tests and earning the approval of the clan elders. Fire release, flame bullet. Another fireball shot toward Ryoma, who now knew the technique's power. Unwilling to waste his remaining insects, he directed only a small swarm to form a bug wall to block the attack. The number of bugs was calculated perfectly, not a single one wasted. As the fireball struck the wall, Ryoma smirked, confident in his strategy. Then Jiraiya's lips curled into a sly grin. Ryoma's heart sank. 2 more fireballs came hurtling toward him. Nanny! Ryoma's eyes bulged in shock. Loved this story? Hit subscribe and join Infinite Novel to be the first to catch new chapters. Chapter 11, Who's spreading lies about me? Ryoma never expected Jiraiya to unleash 3 fire bullet jutsu in one go. Just moments ago, Ryoma had been feeling smug about his control over his insects. He'd even been silently patting himself on the back for his accomplishments. But in the blink of an eye, his jaw dropped. Seriously? A Chunin managing to fire off 3 fireball jutsu at once? Add that to Jiraiya's earlier display of speed with the earth substitution jutsu, and Ryoma felt utterly humiliated. For someone of the same rank, Jiraiya was way out of line. Couldn't he act like a proper Chunin for once? Ryoma thought miserably. He had only come to the training field for a friendly sparring match, not to watch Jiraiya show off his tricks. Seriously, give me a break. Ryoma screamed internally. Boom, boom. The first fireball slammed into Ryoma's insect shield, setting the insects ablaze with a series of crackling pops. The barrier held but was consumed in the process. The remaining 2 fireballs, radiating intense heat, hurtled straight toward Ryoma. He barely had time to react. The moment he had formed the insect barrier, he hadn't anticipated this scenario. After all, in the history of Konoha, no Chunin had ever managed to unleash 3 consecutive fireball jutsu. Only seasoned jonin with mastery over fire release could achieve such a feat. Sure, a Chunin could theoretically pull it off with relentless training, but who would spend so much time on a single jutsu when there were countless others to learn? Ryoma couldn't believe this was Jiraiya. As far as he knew, whenever Jiraiya had free time, he was either loitering near the women's bathhouse or plotting ways to peek. There was no way someone like him had dedicated countless hours to perfecting the fireball jutsu. Yet here they were. 3 fireballs. It made no sense. Left with no options, Ryoma could only stare wide-eyed, paralyzed with fear, as the fireballs closed in on him. Wind release, vacuum sphere. Just as the flames were about to engulf Ryoma, Danzo formed a series of rapid hand seals, channeling wind nature chakra to his mouth. A compressed wind blast shot forward at lightning speed. Whoosh! The wind bullet tore through the 2 remaining fireballs, scattering them into harmless embers. Ryoma collapsed to the ground, drenched in sweat. For a fleeting moment, he had tasted the bitterness of death. His entire body reeked of burnt hair, and his scorched eyebrows and singed hair left him looking as if he'd just survived a firestorm. If Danzo had been even a second slower, Ryoma was sure he'd have been reduced to ash. Jiraiya turned to glance at Danzo after his attack was neutralized. Impressive, Jiraiya said, genuinely acknowledging the elder. No wonder you've trained such powerful organizations like the Umbu and Root. Your skill speaks for itself. Danzo returned Jiraiya's gaze, his tone surprisingly warm. You've certainly surpassed expectations, Jiraiya. Lord Third, your student is remarkable. I pale in comparison. Ryoma, still trembling, staggered to his feet and bowed deeply toward Jiraiya. I apologize for my earlier arrogance. I was wrong to underestimate you. His tone was sincere, his attitude transformed. Shinobi revered strength, and Ryoma's respect for Jiraiya had grown exponentially after this crushing defeat. It's no big deal, Jiraiya said, waving off the apology. But let me give you some advice. It's fine to be competitive, but acting cocky when you lack the skills to back it up is a surefire way to get hurt. Ryoma nodded earnestly, falling into step beside Jiraiya as they left the training ground together. Danzo, still observing the two, turned to Jiraiya with a rare smile. You've improved significantly, Jiraiya. Your progress is astounding. It caught us all off guard. Jiraiya's fight had showcased precision, cunning, and timing. Even Danzo couldn't help but feel impressed. Well, Jiraiya replied with a sheepish grin, it's all thanks to relentless training. No shortcuts here. Of course, he couldn't reveal the truth about the system. If Konoha's higher UPS ever discovered its existence, Jiraiya would be dissected before he could say another word. Oh? That's strange, Danzo said, his lips quirking into a sly smirk. I've heard you spend most of your time loitering near the women's bathhouse. Who said that? Jiraiya exclaimed, his expression twisting into outrage. That's slander. I demand to know who's spreading these lies about me. His indignation was so convincing that even Hiruzen Sarutobi, who knew his students' habits all too well, found himself briefly questioning Jiraiya's innocence. Orochimaru and Tsunade exchanged stunned glances. They couldn't believe how flawlessly Jiraiya could lie with such conviction. No flinching, no hesitation, no shame. It was truly a masterclass in deception. Orochimaru gave a wry smile. Tsunade, I'm starting to worry for you. Worry about what? Tsunade retorted, crossing her arms. If Jiraiya can win, what makes you think I'd lose? Don't misunderstand me, Orochimaru said quickly, raising his hands in mock surrender. I'm not saying you'd lose, but I did hear that if Jiraiya won, you'd promise to grant him a favor. Knowing his personality, I'm sure you can guess what he might ask for. Tsunade's eyes narrowed dangerously. Do you think my fists are just for show? If that idiot dares to ask for anything inappropriate, I'll crush his skull with one punch. Chapter 12, the sooner you win her over, the sooner you reap the rewards. Jiraiya's shameless remark once again made Hiruzen Sarutobi look at him in a new light though. Upon further reflection, it wasn't surprising. After all, Jiraiya was infamous for his frequent peeping at women's bathhouses. Despite being caught countless times, he showed no remorse. With such a thick skin, it would be strange if he wasn't shameless. The second round begins now. Danzo, uninterested in continuing the conversation, immediately announced the start of the next match. Tsunade was paired against Akimichi Sanzen, both drawing the second number. The Akimichi clan was one of Konoha's founding families, joining during the village's creation. As an established clan, they held prominent roles in Konoha's leadership, with each generation's clan heads and elders occupying critical positions. The Akimichi were renowned for their immense physiques, with Sanzen tipping the scales at nearly 300 pounds. Each step he took caused the ground beneath him to tremble faintly. Despite his size, Akimichi Sanzen stood out as one of the most exceptional talents among the younger generation of his clan. If he were ordinary, Danzo would never have taken him as a student. For the Akimichi, their size was their strength. Their secret technique allowed them to convert body fat into chakra, meaning the more fat they had, the stronger they became. Gaining weight was considered part of their training, a unique approach that made their clan unparalleled in physical combat. When it came to sheer destructive power in taijutsu, few families in Konoha could rival the Akimichi. Not even the Hyuga, with their Byakugan and mastery of taijutsu, could compete in raw strength. The Hyuga's gentle fist style targeted an enemy's chakra points and meridians, which was precise but limited in scale. This wasn't to say the Hyuga were weak, their techniques were simply different. If the Hyuga and Akimichi clans ever clashed in war, the Akimichi would undoubtedly fall, as the Byakugan's insight gave the Hyuga an almost unfair advantage. Tsunade and Akimichi Sanzen exchanged respectful nods before Sanzen wasted no time launching the first attack. He formed hand seals swiftly, and his chakra surged into his right hand. His hand expanded several times over, ballooning into a massive, muscular weapon. With surprising speed, he swung it down at Tsunade, aiming to crush her in a single strike. This was the Akimichi clan's signature technique, partial multi-size jutsu. The air whistled as the massive hand descended, carrying tremendous force. Compared to it, Tsunade's frame seemed impossibly small, as if she'd be reduced to a smear on the ground upon impact. Yet Tsunade showed no fear. With a sharp cry, she raised her right fist and punched directly at the giant hand. Boom! A muffled thud echoed across the arena. Tsunade's punch met the massive hand head-on, creating cracks in the ground beneath her feet. The force of her strike dispersed the chakra concentrated in Sanzen's hand, causing it to shrink back to its original size. The outcome was clear, Tsunade had the upper hand. Without using any jutsu, she had dismantled Sanzen's attack with sheer physical strength. Jiraiya observed from the sidelines, nodding to himself. Impressive, he thought. She knew exactly where to hit to disrupt his jutsu's chakra flow. That kind of precision isn't just brute strength, it's knowledge. It was evident that Tsunade understood the workings of the partial multi-size jutsu, including its weak points. Looks like I need to win her over soon. The sooner I make her mine, the sooner I can access the Senju clan's archives, Jiraiya mused, his motivation renewed. The Senju clan was undeniably one of the most powerful in Konoha's history. Although the clan had declined rapidly after the deaths of the first and second Hokage, their archives remained invaluable treasures. They contained detailed studies of other clans' jutsu, including their weaknesses. If a technique had no inherent weakness, the Senju would create one after all. Tobirama Senju's prowess in developing jutsu was legendary. Most of these records had fallen into the hands of Hiruzen Sarutobi and Danzo after the Senju's decline. While both were disciples of the second Hokage, they had done little to preserve the clan. Instead, they systematically weakened it. Danzo, under Hiruzen's tacit approval, had even orchestrated the assassination of Noeka Senju during the Second Great Ninja War, ensuring the Senju bloodline would end. This was done partly for power by seizing the Senju archives and partly to maintain stability in the village. A strong, independent clan was a threat to Konoha's fragile balance. The Uchiha clan's eventual downfall was another example. Without the Senju to counterbalance them, the Uchiha grew too powerful, prompting Hiruzen and Danzo to eliminate them before they could stage a coup. Since Hiruzen's rise to power, no clan with a Kekkei Genkai had flourished in Konoha. Danzo, operating in the shadows, ensured such clans were systematically weakened or eradicated. The Hyuga survived only by dividing their family into the main and branch houses, voluntarily diluting their power. Jiraiya shook his head. If I can get access to those archives. Meanwhile, Sanzen's expression darkened. The elders were right, he muttered. The weaknesses of our clan's techniques have already been studied by others. Despite his frustration, Sanzen wasn't ready to give up. Even if his chances of victory were slim, he wouldn't surrender without a fight. Human boulder, Sanzen formed another set of seals, and his body swelled even larger. His head and limbs retracted into his torso, transforming him into a massive, spinning sphere. Dust billowed as he rolled towards Tsunade, the sheer force of his momentum threatening to level anything in his path. Chapter 13 Never misuse at the speed of the human boulder was incredible within moments, it closed the distance to Tsunade, leaving her no time to dodge. Not that Tsunade intended to dodge in the first place. If it's about strength, I won't lose to anyone. Her voice brimmed with confidence and fighting spirit. Forming a hand seal, Tsunade leapt from the ground, her right leg taut as a steel cable. She aimed a devastating kick at the oncoming human boulder, fully intending to meet force with force. The technique she used was called Heavenly Foot of Pain, an immensely powerful taijutsu move. At this point, Tsunade hadn't yet mastered medical ninjutsu, so her combat style relied on brute strength paired with taijutsu. Though she hadn't inherited the would-release Kekkei Genkai from her grandfather, Hashirama Senju, she had inherited his monstrous strength. Because her body was overflowing with raw power, every taijutsu move she executed carried unimaginable force. Bang! A muffled impact echoed through the clearing as Tsunade's kick collided with the human boulder. For 2 heartbeats, they were locked in a stalemate. Then, the human boulder was sent flying backward, crashing into the forest behind with tremendous force. Crack! Crack! Tree splintered and toppled as Akimichi Sanzen reverted to his normal form, collapsing to the ground, his face pale with fear. He had heard the rumors about Tsunade's terrifying strength, but having never faced her in battle, he'd assumed the stories were exaggerated. Only now, after their clash, did he realize they were entirely true. Tsunade landed gracefully, immediately using the body flicker technique to dash towards Sanzen. Her speed was so great that only after images remained in her wake. Sanzen forced himself upright and partially used the multi-size technique again, swelling his hands to several times their normal size before slamming them toward Tsunade. Wind release, Gale Palm. Tsunade's voice rang out as she launched another punch, this time infused with wind-natured chakra. Her strike was faster and more forceful than before, effortlessly breaking through Sanzen's technique without sustaining a scratch. In a flash, Tsunade leaped forward and landed right in front of him. Without hesitation, she threw a straight punch, slamming into Sanzen's chest. Sanzen let out a pained cry as his body was sent flying, skidding across the ground for dozens of meters before coming to a halt. The impact left a deep trench in his wake, the earth completely torn apart. That's strength. It's terrifying. If I ever want to peek on Tsunade while she's bathing, I'll have to be extremely careful. No way I can let myself get caught. Jiraiya watched from the sidelines, making a mental note. In the original timeline, Jiraiya had once tried peeping on Tsunade while she bathed and ended up with multiple broken ribs for his trouble. Now that he had reincarnated into this world, he vowed to avoid such a miserable fate. If he ever planned to sneak a peek, he'd ensure every detail was meticulously prepared. Cough. Sanzen spat out a mouthful of blood, clearly injured. If not for the Akimichi clan's naturally durable bodies, any other Chunin would have been carried off by medical nin after taking such a punch. I yield, Sanzen muttered, touching his bruised chest with a wince. Though it stung his pride, he had no choice. His opponent was simply stronger. Better to concede than to suffer more of Tsunade's punches. Despite being a capable shinobi, Sanzen's defeat had been swift and decisive because of Tsunade's monstrous strength. Danzo's expression darkened slightly. He had initiated these matches, yet his side had already lost 2 in a row. It was humiliating. The third match? He didn't even need to think about it, it was a guaranteed loss. Orochimaru was an unmatched genius, someone whose strength was already approaching that of a jonin. Danzo's student, Yamanaka Ikii, didn't stand a chance. Moreover, Danzo's best chance at victory, Abarame Ryoma, had already been defeated by Jiraiya. This match is unnecessary, Danzo said curtly, abandoning the idea of letting Ikii fight Orochimaru. Hokage-sama, I concede. My students are no match for yours. He didn't want to prolong his embarrassment. Sarutobi Hiruzen exhaled smoke from his pipe and shook his head. It's not that you're lacking as a teacher, my students simply have excellent talent. Danzo's ability to train subordinates was undeniable. After all, most of the elite Umbu operatives had been groomed under his guidance. Hokage-sama, there are matters in the Umbu that require my attention. I'll take my leave. Danzo left the training ground with his students, not bothering to linger. At this point, he had yet to establish root and was still officially part of the Umbu. After the Second Great Ninja War, Hiruzen would grow wary of Danzo's increasing influence and take back control of the Umbu. It was then that Danzo created Root, a faction Hiruzen permitted to exist to handle morally gray operations and to take the fall for any blameworthy deeds. Jiraiya, Orochimaru said, breaking the silence, how did your strength improve so much so quickly? It's simple. I'm a genius, Jiraiya replied with a smug grin. Orochimaru sighed, exasperated by his friend's antics. Tsunade, Jiraiya said, his tone playful, I won, so you better not back out on what you promised yesterday. I never go back on my word, Tsunade replied, still surprised by Jiraiya's victory but unwilling to deny her promise. See? I told you I'd amaze all of you. Jiraiya puffed out his chest proudly. Defeating one Chunin isn't anything to brag about, Tsunade retorted, rolling her eyes. And no one's amazed. When I beat Abarame Ryoma, you were so shocked your jaw practically hit the ground, Jiraiya shot back. Tsunade faltered, momentarily speechless. Seeing her flustered expression, Jiraiya chuckled inwardly. Sensei, Jiraiya said, turning to Hiruzen, I've won, so it's time for you to teach me the water release, water mirror technique. Eager to learn, Jiraiya was adamant. It wasn't that he wanted to use the technique to spy on women bathing, he simply wanted to enhance his reconnaissance abilities for future missions. He would never misuse such a jutsu for trivial purposes. Chapter 14, the Shuriken Shadow Clone Technique. As a proper ninja, Jiraiya would never use ninjutsu for inappropriate purposes unless there were spies or enemies sneaking into the women's bathhouse. Enemy spies from rival villages were incredibly skilled at disguising themselves, rarely exposing any flaws in their cover. However, when it came to bathhouses, all disguises had to be removed, making it the most opportune time for their true identities to slip. That's why, after mastering the water release, water mirror technique, Jiraiya believed it would be his duty to ensure the safety of the village by conducting a thorough investigation at the women's bathhouse. Jiraiya, you've truly surprised me today, Hiruzen Sarutobi remarked. I'll teach you the water release, water mirror technique right now. While this jutsu has its limitations, it's incredibly stealthy and difficult to detect, even in a crowded place like a bathhouse. Teacher, Jiraiya said, his mouth hanging open in astonishment. Are you speaking from personal experience? The room went silent as Orochimaru and Tsunade turned their attention to Sarutobi. Only then did Sarutobi realize he had inadvertently let something slip. Quickly, he cleared his throat and said, it was just a hypothetical example. As a responsible ninja, I would never use jutsu inappropriately. Teacher, there's no need to be so nervous, Jiraiya replied with a sly grin. Even if you did use the jutsu in the bathhouse, I'd never think you were peeping. I'd assume you were just ensuring the village's safety by checking for enemy spies. You've got the right idea, Jiraiya. Sarutobi nodded solemnly, mentally noting the perfect excuse should he ever get caught. So you have used it in the bathhouse, Jiraiya exclaimed, raising an eyebrow. In the original Naruto series, Hiruzen Sarutobi was known to be quite the voyeur, often spying on Konoha's every corner using his crystal ball. The thought of him not peeking at the bathhouse was something Jiraiya refused to believe. What Jiraiya truly wanted to learn, however, was Sarutobi's personally developed telescope technique. But he also knew Sarutobi would never teach it to him so easily, especially since the sight of Sarutobi himself using the jutsu to spy on the bathhouse might lead to an awkward confrontation. Realizing Jiraiya's playful banter was getting out of hand, Sarutobi's face darkened. Jiraiya, do you still want to learn the jutsu or not? Recognizing the danger of pushing things further, Jiraiya wisely closed his mouth. Missing out on a jutsu that could help him investigate the bathhouse would be an unbearable loss. Sarutobi then proceeded to teach Jiraiya the method for mastering the water release, water mirror technique, demonstrating it in detail. Water release, water mirror technique. Sarutobi formed a series of hand signs, and a water mirror materialized in front of him. 8 meters away, another water mirror appeared, perfectly reflecting the image before him. Everything reflected in the first mirror could be seen clearly in the second. While this jutsu could only be used in the presence of water, Sarutobi, known as the Professor for his unparalleled mastery of jutsu, had trained himself to execute it even without a water source. The only drawback was that without water to disguise it, the mirror would hover conspicuously in the air. Did you memorize the hand signs and chakra flow? Sarutobi asked. Yes, I've got it. Jiraiya nodded confidently. With some practice, he was certain he could master the technique. Now that the demonstration is over, what's the next lesson for today? Orochimaru asked eagerly. The group only had 1 day a week to learn directly from Sarutobi, and Orochimaru wasn't about to waste it. Today, I'll teach you an A-rank jutsu, the Shuriken Shadow Clone Technique, Sarutobi said, exhaling a puff of smoke. Jiraiya's eyes widened in surprise. He hadn't expected Sarutobi to teach such an advanced technique so soon. The Shuriken Shadow Clone Technique was an evolution of the Shadow Clone Jutsu developed by the second Hokage. By infusing chakra into shuriken, this technique allowed them to multiply into a deadly web of blades. When performed with sufficient chakra, a single shuriken could multiply into thousands, forming a nearly inescapable storm of steel. Unlike ordinary Shadow Clone Jutsu, the shuriken clones created by this technique were physical and lethal, making it one of the most powerful A-rank jutsu. Even a high-level ninja could be overwhelmed if caught unprepared. Sarutobi explained the technique in detail, emphasizing its strategic potential as an ambush tool. Teacher, are you saying this jutsu can create physical clones of shuriken? Tsunade asked, astonished. When she first heard the name of the jutsu, she had assumed it was an illusion. Of course. If it didn't create physical clones, I wouldn't classify it as an A-rank technique, Sarutobi replied. But teacher, Orochimaru interjected, how is it possible for lifeless objects like shuriken, which don't contain chakra, to produce physical clones? Orochimaru's question was valid. Unlike living beings, shuriken lacked chakra and couldn't be divided like shadow clones. While shuriken themselves lack chakra, we as ninja do not. The key to this technique lies in continuously infusing chakra into the shuriken. The more chakra you pour in, the more clones you can produce, Sarutobi explained. However, Jiraiya pointed out, frowning, ordinary metal shuriken aren't very conductive to chakra. Even if we inject chakra into them, they can't sustain the amount needed for an A-rank jutsu. Jiraiya's observation was correct. Most standard shuriken were made of common metal, which wasn't ideal for channeling large amounts of chakra. Only specially crafted shuriken made from rare materials could support the technique's demanding chakra requirements. Chapter 15 What a waste of such a skillful tongue in the world of Naruto. Even ordinary iron ore is a scarce resource, fiercely contested between nations as a strategic asset. Coupled with the primitive refining techniques of this world, metals of any kind are extremely rare. And metals capable of channeling chakra? Even more so. Even in a place like Konohagakure, the strongest shinobi village, such rare metals are incredibly limited. From what Jiraiya knew, only a select few weapons in the entire village were forged using these special materials. Jiraiya speculated that ordinary shuriken simply couldn't be used for the shuriken shadow clone jutsu. This powerful, large-scale offensive technique required specially crafted shuriken. Otherwise, such a devastating jutsu would surely have been taught to most jonin by Sarutobi Hiruzen. A jutsu of this magnitude was a game-changer in battle. A single shuriken thrown could spawn thousands of tangible clones, capable of wiping out an entire group of enemies. However, the number of people in Konoha who had mastered this jutsu was astonishingly small. While it was an A-rank technique and difficult to learn, Jiraiya believed that most jonin could master it if Hiruzen were willing to teach them. This led to one conclusion: the shuriken itself was the key. You're right, Hiruzen nodded. Ordinary shuriken can't channel the massive amounts of chakra required for this jutsu. Only specially crafted weapons can handle it. Hiruzen then reached into his pocket and pulled out a shuriken. It looked no different from any regular shuriken. No unique design, no special markings. This is forged from a rare, chakra-conducting metal. It can withstand a substantial amount of chakra being infused into it. Now, I'll demonstrate the jutsu for you. Watch closely. Hiruzen gripped the shuriken and stepped forward, his tone commanding their full attention. Jiraiya quickly cleared his mind, focusing entirely on the demonstration. Opportunities to learn an A-rank jutsu were rare, even for him. In Konoha, most civilian shinobi could only hope to learn high-level jutsu after performing exceptional feats of service for the village. Many powerful techniques were tightly controlled by the larger clans. With a sharp glint in his eyes, Hiruzen hurled the shuriken into the forest. His hands moved in a blur of seals before he bellowed Shuriken Shadow Clone Jutsu. The shuriken, now slicing through the air, suddenly split into 2, then 4, then 8 and then multiplied exponentially. Within the span of 2 breaths, a single shuriken had transformed into 1,000. Boom! Boom! A cacophony of explosions echoed as trees were felled en masse, leaving a vast, open clearing and a thick cloud of dust in their wake. What incredible power! Orochimaru's eyes sparkled with excitement as he gazed at the destruction before him. Jiraiya was equally awestruck. The technique was more than capable of shredding a jonin to pieces. And yet, he knew that Hiruzen hadn't even unleashed the full potential of the jutsu. From what Jiraiya had heard, Shuriken Shadow Clone Jutsu had a terrifyingly high ceiling. The 4th Hokage, Namikaze Minato, had once used this technique to create a barrage of shuriken akin to a laser cannon. In mere seconds, he had conjured tens of thousands of shuriken, annihilating his enemies in a devastating sweep. Hiruzen extended his hand, and the shuriken he had thrown moments ago flew back to him, still coated in his chakra. Have you memorized the hand seals? Hiruzen asked, pleased by the stunned expressions on his students' faces. Yes, sensei. We've memorized them all. Jiraiya and the others replied in unison. Good. Take these 3 shuriken and keep them safe. Losing one would mean earning another through significant contributions to the village. These aren't just standard village property, I'm giving them to you personally. Hiruzen handed each of them a shuriken, along with a scroll. These scrolls detail the exact chakra control method required for the technique. Once you've memorized it, destroy the scroll immediately. This information cannot be allowed to leak. Yes, sensei, they chorused, taking the items with utmost care. Jiraiya held the shuriken in his hand, channeling his chakra into it. He was surprised by how smoothly the chakra flowed. No resistance, no leakage. What kind of metal is this, he wondered. Its conductivity and containment are remarkable. Sensei, if only this jutsu could be performed with ordinary shuriken, Tsunade murmured. It would save so many lives in future wars. I've thought of that too, Tsunade, Hiruzen sighed. I tried countless times to modify the technique, but every attempt ended in failure. Improving it further will be up to your generation. Hiruzen smiled warmly, his voice filled with hope. With talented young shinobi like you, Konoha's future is bright. Of course, this was just another instance of his regular indoctrination preaching the will of fire. Every so often, Hiruzen would gather Konoha's shinobi at the Hokage Tower to deliver these speeches, spreading his ideals like a true master of propaganda. Sensei, Orochimaru suddenly interjected, flicking his tongue over the shuriken. If we could find a stronger chakra-conducting metal, wouldn't that enhance the jutsu's power even further? Jiraiya watched Orochimaru's agile tongue in action and couldn't help but think, what a waste of such a skilled tongue on someone who doesn't even pursue relationships. You're absolutely right, Hiruzen replied. Ideally, it would be a metal imbued with wind-natured chakra. That would be perfect for enhancing this technique. Jiraiya's thoughts drifted again to Minato's legendary display of the jutsu. The sheer destructive power must have been due to the material used to forge his shuriken. But metals like these, Hiruzen continued with a sigh, are nearly impossible to find. I've sent teams to search for them, but to no avail. As the inventor of this technique, no one wanted to refine it more than Hiruzen himself. But without the right materials, even his ambitions remained out of reach. Chapter 16 As long as you've got hands, special metals are exceedingly rare in the world of Naruto. Acquiring them is almost entirely a matter of luck. Even with the major villages devoting extensive resources to their collection, finding them remains a monumental challenge. I wonder if I'll ever get the chance to sign in and obtain ninja tools forged from such rare metals, Jiraiya mused inwardly. You can start practicing this jutsu now. I'll stay here and point out your mistakes, said Hiruzen Sarutobi. None of them dared waste the opportunity. They immediately began training. After all, it wasn't every day that they had Hiruzen Sarutobi, the legendary professor of ninjutsu, guiding them in person. Known for his mastery over every jutsu in Konoha, his presence ensured they could avoid countless pitfalls in their training. This was especially crucial for an A-rank jutsu, which was notoriously difficult to master. Without proper guidance, it could take years to learn such a technique. To put things into perspective, most shonen typically relied on B-rank jutsu. A-rank jutsu were not only hard to acquire but also exceptionally difficult to execute. Orochimaru, don't inject chakra into the shuriken so quickly. That kind of speed makes the chakra unstable. Slow down a bit. Tsunade, when you throw the shuriken, don't just rely on your raw strength. You need to combine it with chakra. Remember, chakra is the foundation of all ninjutsu. While your brute strength enhances the shadow shuriken jutsu, it's the chakra that truly makes it effective. Jiraiya, you're doing well. Keep it up. Hiruzen stood to the side, carefully observing their progress. The moment he spotted a mistake, he corrected it immediately. When training in ninjutsu, time seemed to pass unnoticed. Before they realized it, the sun had set and the sky grew dim. Yet, despite training all day, none of them successfully executed the technique. Sensei, this jutsu is ridiculously hard to learn, Tsunade complained, her frustration evident. I've been practicing relentlessly all day and still can't get the chakra in the shuriken to condense into a clone. Maybe this technique just isn't for me. Tsunade, don't be discouraged so quickly, Hiruzen said reassuringly. It took me 3 years to develop and perfect this technique. It's normal for you to struggle at first. With consistent practice, you'll master it eventually. Inwardly, though, Hiruzen couldn't help but think, you think you can learn in one day what took me 3 years to perfect? Give me some credit, will you? Shadow Shuriken Jutsu. Jiraiya suddenly flung a shuriken toward a tree and swiftly formed hand seals, injecting chakra into the shuriken with remarkable steadiness. The shuriken trembled slightly in mid-flight before splitting into 2 identical copies. Bang! Bang! The 2 shurikens struck the tree, leaving behind 2 clean holes. Seeing Jiraiya successfully perform the Shadow Shuriken Jutsu, everyone was stunned. Tsunade rubbed her eyes vigorously, convinced she must have been seeing things. For a moment, there was nothing but silence as everyone processed what they had just witnessed. Even though Jiraiya had only created 1 clone, it was undeniable that he had already mastered the technique. With more practice, he would be able to create a larger number of clones effortlessly. This jutsu is ridiculously hard, sensei. I practiced all day and could only manage to create 1 clone, Jiraiya complained, retreating his specially made shuriken with a thread of chakra. You've done exceptionally well, Jiraiya, Hiruzen said, recovering from his shock. To think you've mastered this jutsu so quickly, you've given me yet another pleasant surprise. Could it be that I've underestimated Jiraiya's talent all this time? Hiruzen mused. He might even surpass Orochimaru. When Hiruzen had initially taken Jiraiya as a disciple, it had been a calculated political move to secure his position as Hokage by appealing to the common shinobi. He hadn't expected Jiraiya to possess such extraordinary talent. Now, this turn of events felt like a windfall. Unlike Tsunade, who hailed from the prestigious Senju clan, or Orochimaru, who was a prodigy in his own right, Jiraiya had no familial backing. This meant his loyalty would remain unwaveringly aligned with Hiruzen. As Jiraiya's influence and strength grew, so too would Hiruzen's power and authority. In the original timeline, Hiruzen had always viewed Orochimaru as his successor, not just because of his unparalleled talent, but because he was easier to control. By elevating Orochimaru to Hokage, Hiruzen believed he could maintain control from behind the scenes. When Orochimaru defected, Hiruzen had turned to Jiraiya, but the latter's free-spirited nature and disinterest in politics had made him an unsuitable candidate. Jiraiya, guided by the Great Toad Sage's prophecy, left the village in search of the one destined to change the world. Hiruzen's next choice had been Minato Namikaze, another shinobi with no clan affiliation. By supporting Minato's rise to the position of 4th Hokage, Hiruzen had hoped to keep his influence intact. When Obito orchestrated the Nine Tails attack, Hiruzen and Danzo had notably refrained from intervening, likely viewing it as an opportunity to eliminate Minato, who had grown increasingly independent. After Minato's death, Hiruzen reassumed the role of Hokage, cementing his control over Konoha once more. As for Tsunade, being a member of the Senju clan had always made her an unlikely candidate for Hokage. If not for Orochimaru killing Hiruzen, she might never have been offered the position at all. Even her hemophobia, developed during the Second Shinobi War, was likely the result of a scheme orchestrated by Hiruzen and Danzo. I should start paying closer attention to shinobi from commoner backgrounds, Hiruzen thought. It'd be a shame to let such talent slip through the cracks. Jiraiya, Tsunade asked, breaking his train of thought. Did you figure out some sort of trick to mastering the technique so quickly? Trick? To master an A-rank jutsu? Nah, you just need hands. Jiraiya spread his hands nonchalantly. The real reason Jiraiya had picked up the jutsu so quickly lay in his innate abilities, his mastery of hand seals and his sage physique. With his expertise in hand seals, he could effortlessly memorize and execute even the most complex sequences, saving time and effort. Meanwhile, his sage physique granted him unparalleled chakra control, allowing him to execute techniques with precision. Tsunade, however, was unimpressed. She balled her fist, glaring at him. "Seriously? That's the best you've got," she snapped. "You just need hands. Is that even human logic? If learning A-rank jutsu were as simple as having hands, they'd be as common as pebbles on the ground." Even Orochimaru's expression twitched at the remark. He, too, felt an odd sense of insult. Chapter 17, Burn, Youth. "Why are you two looking at me like that? Did I say something wrong?" Jiraiya chuckled at the murderous glares from Orochimaru and Tsunade, finding their expressions more amusing than threatening. After a long day of training, Jiraiya was exhausted, but teasing Orochimaru and Tsunade served as an excellent way to unwind. Sure, it might annoy them, but seeing their frustrated faces gave him immense satisfaction. "Jiraiya, you're so petty. If you don't want to share your little trick, fine, but don't think I care," Tsunade scoffed, crossing her arms. She was convinced that Jiraiya had discovered some secret during their training session. Otherwise, there was no way he could have mastered the technique so quickly. "That's enough training for today," Hiruzen Sarutobi said with a smile. "Since Jiraiya has already mastered this technique, you can ask him for guidance if you run into any difficulties. Don't be shy. I hope both of you can learn this jutsu within the week. Sensei, even if I never master this jutsu in my life, I'd rather die than ask Jiraiya for help. And Orochimaru won't ask him either. Who does he think he is?" Tsunade declared with absolute confidence. Hiruzen didn't respond to her outburst. He simply activated the body flicker technique and disappeared from the training ground. He had a mountain of paperwork waiting for him, and if he didn't get started soon, it would mean another long night of overtime. That, in turn, would cut into his reconnaissance time at the women's bathhouse. No, wait, his village security duties. After all, Konoha was on edge with tensions rising between the villages. "Orochimaru," Tsunade snapped, "why are you asking Jiraiya for advice? Because he already mastered it. Should I ask you for help instead?" Orochimaru shot her an indifferent glance. "You bastard." Tsunade lost her temper and punched Orochimaru, sending him flying across the training ground. "Why did you hit me?" Orochimaru stood up, brushing the dust off his clothes, looking genuinely confused. "I didn't say anything wrong. Sensei's gone, and I want to master the Shuriken Shadow Clone technique quickly. Who else should I ask?" "The reason your chakra keeps dispersing when you're forming the clones is simple," Jiraiya interjected, giving Orochimaru a pitying look. "What's the reason?" Orochimaru asked, ignoring Tsunade's glare as he dusted himself off. "It's because you're rushing the process without fully controlling the chakra flow. Once you can meticulously manage every bit of chakra you channel into the shuriken, the clones will form without issue," Jiraiya explained. Mastering every ounce of chakra was the hardest part of the Shuriken Shadow Clone technique. If not for his sage body, which he'd received through one of his fortuitous training accidents, he wouldn't have been able to pull it off so quickly either. Orochimaru nodded thoughtfully, already deep in concentration as he resumed his training. "Tsunade," Jiraiya said, walking up to her with a sly grin, "it's time for you to keep your promise." "I always honor my word," Tsunade replied, though her expression betrayed a hint of regret. "Whatever you want, just say it. As long as it doesn't go against my principles, I'll do it. After dinner, come to my place. I'll tell you my request then," Jiraiya said with a smirk. The task he had in mind would require a lot of energy, and after an entire day of training, he didn't want Tsunade to be too exhausted to carry it out. Jiraiya and Tsunade left the training ground, leaving Orochimaru behind to train tirelessly. 1001, 1002, 1003, as Jiraiya neared his house, he spotted a young man in a green bodysuit doing rapid push UPS on an open field. It was none other than Might Do, the father of Might Guy. Do was known as the eternal genin of Konoha, perpetually overlooked and ridiculed by his peers. Few knew that this seemingly unimpressive man had mastered the Eight Gates, a legendary taijutsu technique. In the future, during the Third Shinobi War, Do would sacrifice himself to save his son, Guy, and his comrades from the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist. By opening the 8th gate, he burned his youth to the fullest and turned the infamous swordsman into nothing more than a cautionary tale. "Do-san," Jiraiya called out with a smile. Do froze mid-push-up, then turned to Jiraiya, tears streaming down his face. "The Hokage student is speaking to me. This is a glorious day. I'll run 100 laps around the village to celebrate." "Do-san, there's no need to overdo it," Jiraiya said, taken aback by Do's intensity. But Do didn't hear him. "You're right, 200 laps it is. Youth burns brightest when we push ourselves to the limit." Jiraiya sighed, realizing it was futile to stop him. He decided it was best to leave before Do pushed himself into oblivion. Chapter 18, a bit of disappointment. "Jiraiya-san, I'm so sorry. I got too excited," Might Do said, calming down as he wiped the tears streaming down his face. His voice carried a tinge of embarrassment. "Training is important, but you need to balance it with rest. Overtraining can backfire," Jiraiya advised, his tone warm but firm. "I've just finished my training for the day and was about to grab some dinner. If you haven't eaten yet, why don't you join me?" Jiraiya extended the invitation genuinely. He had recognized Might Do's immense potential and knew the importance of building a good relationship with him. Do's boundless energy and dedication were assets Jiraiya wanted on his side, especially with the dangerous future awaiting the shinobi world. "The Hokage's apprentice inviting me to dinner? I'll have to run 1,000 laps around the village to commemorate this moment, Do exclaimed, his voice booming with enthusiasm as he raised his face to the sky and shouted. Jiraiya couldn't help but feel a bit perplexed by Do's reaction. The man's boundless energy and excitement were almost otherworldly. Jiraiya-san, I'm truly sorry, but I can't join you for dinner just yet. I haven't completed today's training, Do apologized sincerely, bowing his head. That's fine. I'll head back for now, Jiraiya said with a smile. There was no need to push, he could tell Do already held him in high regard. It was a relationship he could nurture over time. Pushing too hard might have the opposite effect. Burn bright, youth. I can't let my youth go to waste, Do bellowed, then dashed off to run laps around the village. Even his jogging is more spirited than Boruto's entire series, Jiraiya muttered, watching Do's figure disappear into the distance. As he stood there, Jiraiya couldn't help but think to himself, I wonder if I'll ever be able to unlock the 8 gates technique. That would be something to look forward to. The power of the 8 gates had always fascinated Jiraiya. Although unlocking the final gate, the Gate of Death, came at a steep price, one's life, Jiraiya's body was different. He possessed the potential to awaken the sage body. With his regenerative capabilities, he believed he could endure even the most intense strain of the technique. If I master the 8 gates and combine it with sage mode, my body's vitality would increase exponentially. I could endure even the dead gate without succumbing, he mused confidently. Returning home, Jiraiya fished a plump trout from the pond near his house and brought it into the kitchen. Money was tight. His parents' war compensation and his monthly stipend had mostly been squandered by his younger self on raunchy novels and manga. At least those books served as inspiration for his future as a writer. He sighed, resolving to skim through them again when he had the time. They'd help enrich his creative mind. For now, though, he had to make do with what little money he had left, barely enough to last the month. Missions weren't an option yet since he was still deep in training. With the Second Shinobi World War brewing, though, Hiruzen would soon assign their team real missions to prepare them for what was to come. Just as Jiraiya finished his modest dinner, a familiar voice rang out from the courtyard. Jiraiya, I'm here. Whatever you need, just ask as long as it's reasonable. Tsunade's commanding tone echoed through the quiet evening. Rubbing his full belly, Jiraiya stepped outside. Tsunade, I've prepared hot water for you in the bath. You can go in now. What? Tsunade's face turned crimson. You pervert. You think I'm going to bathe for you to watch? Absolutely not. Tsunade, calm down. What are you even imagining? Jiraiya laughed, raising his hands in mock surrender. Then what do you want from me? Tsunade asked, her voice softening but still wary. The training grounds, Jiraiya said, pointing to the dusty and cobweb-covered area. The equipment hasn't been used in a while, and it's filthy. I need you to clean it up. Warm water will make it easier to get everything spotless. Tsunade blinked, surprised. You want me to clean? She had come prepared to fend off some inappropriate request, maybe even punch him if needed. She had underestimated him, assuming his intentions were less than pure. For a moment, she didn't know how to respond. Well, yeah, Jiraiya said casually. Unless you're too disappointed that I didn't ask for something else, he smirked mischievously. You wish, Tsunade snapped, her face flushing red again. If you ever try to spy on me, I'll make sure you regret it. She grabbed the warm water and cleaning supplies and stomped toward the training grounds. Don't slack off. I'm going to check your work later, Jiraiya called after her. Tsunade didn't bother replying. Instead, she crushed a loose stone under her foot as if to vent her frustration. She's got a temper, but one day, she'll be eating out of my hand, Jiraiya thought to himself with a sly grin. Women admire strength, and with my system, I'll become unstoppable. Tsunade will come around eventually. Whistling to himself, Jiraiya walked to the pond, stripped off his clothes, and jumped into the water for a refreshing bath. Meanwhile, Tsunade stared at the training grounds in dismay. Dust and cobwebs covered everything. This is going to take forever, she muttered, shaking her head. Grumbling under her breath, she began scrubbing the equipment. Stupid Jiraiya. I'll make him pay for this, she growled, dumping out dirty water and going to fetch a fresh bucket. As she neared the pond, she caught sight of Jiraiya stepping out of the water, completely unbothered by his lack of clothing. Jiraiya, you idiot. What are you doing? Her face flushed a deep crimson, and she spun around with a shriek, refusing to look. Chapter 19 Doubts Tsunade, you were spying on me while I was bathing. Jiraiya immediately deflected, pointing an accusatory finger. You bastard. Get dressed right now, or I'll kill you. Tsunade growled, her fury barely contained. Jiraiya, sensing the danger, hurriedly threw on his clothes. The last thing he wanted was to feel the wrath of Tsunade's fists. He didn't mind tasting her other attributes, though. Once fully dressed, Jiraiya addressed her nonchalantly. After you finish cleaning the training grounds and fixing the door, you're free to leave. You idiot. If you ever strip in front of me without my permission again, I'll stomp your little bird into the ground. Tsunade shot back with a venomous glare, her tone leaving no room for argument. Jiraiya flinched, instinctively feeling a chill down below. That glare was terrifying. If you destroy my bird, what'll happen to your future happiness? He muttered internally. After taking a moment to compose himself, Jiraiya dropped to the ground and began doing push-ups. Sweat quickly formed on his brow as he pushed himself to his limits. To fully unlock the sage body, rigorous physical training was essential. Besides, he knew his sudden surge in strength hadn't gone unnoticed. Danzo was bound to send someone to spy on him and figure out the source of his newfound power. To throw Danzo off the trail, Jiraiya needed to create the perfect image, a man diligently honing his skills through sheer hard work. Not far from his home, hidden among the thick branches of a leafy tree, a masked Umbu member wearing a rabbit mask silently observed Jiraiya. Just as Jiraiya suspected, Danzo had wasted no time. As soon as he returned to his headquarters, he dispatched a ninja to monitor Jiraiya closely. Danzo's curiosity burned. How had Jiraiya grown so strong so suddenly? Meanwhile, Tsunade glanced at the broken door and sighed. "Why did I have to kick the door down?" she muttered, regretting her earlier outburst. She had just finished cleaning the training grounds, but repairing the door was a whole new challenge. She had no idea where to even begin. 978, 979, 980, Jiraiya was now doing one-handed push UPS, his sweat dripping onto the ground like rain. He grit his teeth and pushed on, reaching the absolute limits of his endurance. He knew that only by repeatedly breaking past his limits could he truly grow stronger. What the hell happened to him? Tsunade wondered, watching him from a distance. Why is he training so hard all of a sudden? Could his recent power-up really be the result of this intense regimen? But even if that's true, his strength has grown at an absurd rate. It's almost terrifying. Unless... Tsunade paused, considering the idea. Unless Jiraiya's always been a genius. Maybe he was weak before because he never took his training seriously, always too busy peeping. Now that he's finally focusing, his abilities are skyrocketing. She clenched her fists. I need to fix this door and get back to training. I can't let him leave me in the dust. Determined, Tsunade gathered wood planks and nails, throwing herself into the task of rebuilding the door. By the time the sky began to lighten, signaling dawn, she wiped the sweat from her brow and admired her work. Done. Not bad, if I say so myself, she declared proudly. Jiraiya walked over, took one look at the door, and froze. Wait, this is the door you fixed. His expression was one of utter disbelief. The door was riddled with gaps, practically falling apart. To make matters worse, Tsunade was looking at it with a smug sense of accomplishment. What's with that face? Tsunade snapped, catching his expression. This door is perfect. It's ventilated, lets me see what's happening outside, and is super convenient. You should be thanking me. You're kidding, right? You call this a door? Jiraiya muttered under his breath. Tsunade scowled. If you're not happy with it, fix it yourself. I stayed up all night working on this. I'm going to bed. Without waiting for a response, she stormed off. Jiraiya scratched his head, feeling utterly defeated. Tsunade's ability to argue nonsense with such confidence was something else. As he walked into the training grounds, Jiraiya noticed the space was spotless. Tsunade had been meticulous in her cleaning, despite her earlier outburst. He inspected the training equipment designed to launch projectiles for reaction training and found everything in working order. After loading the devices with wooden shuriken, he activated them and began practicing. The days blurred together, and soon 5 had passed. In a dimly lit underground chamber, the Umbu with the rabbit mask knelt before Danzo. Danzo-sama, I have observed Jiraiya for several days. There is nothing unusual about his behavior. He only sleeps for a few hours each night, spending the rest of his time rigorously training in taijutsu and ninjutsu. I believe his recent surge in strength is directly related to his intense training, so, it's all due to his natural talent. Danzo mused, frowning. Jiraiya was always distracted by other pursuits. Perhaps he's finally taking his training seriously. During my observation, he did not engage in any peeping, the rabbit-masked operative confirmed. That's odd. Danzo tapped his fingers against the table. After a moment, he issued his next order. Tonight, infiltrate his home. Retrieve all of his parents' belongings. The operative nodded. Understood. Danzo leaned forward, his expression grim. Be discreet. Jiraiya must not discover this. Stealing from the family of shinobi who died for the village is a shameful act. If this gets out, it would severely damage Konoha's reputation. I won't allow that to happen. Danzo's gaze hardened. Despite his growing obsession with power, his love for Konoha still burned brightly. His intentions, though increasingly twisted, were born from that devotion. Chapter 20 Lightning Flame Blade and Lightning Chakra Transformation. Sign in. Upon waking up, Jiraiya spoke without hesitation. This marked his 7th day in the world of Naruto and the second opportunity to sign in. He was eagerly anticipating the reward this time around. With the Second Shinobi World War on the verge of breaking out, everyone would inevitably end up on the battlefield. It was crucial to improve his strength as quickly as possible, and the system's rewards were undoubtedly the best and fastest way to achieve that. Sign-in successful. Congratulations, you have obtained the premium ninja tool, Lightning Flame Blade. It has been placed in the system's inventory and can be extracted at any time. The system's mechanical voice echoed in Jiraiya's mind. To his surprise, this time the reward was a ninja tool. From the name alone, it sounded quite impressive. He hoped its actual abilities wouldn't disappoint. Extract the Lightning Flame Blade. Without any hesitation, Jiraiya gave the system his command. As soon as the words left his mouth, the space in front of him began to ripple. Sparks of lightning and flame suddenly burst forth, clashing violently before merging into a single object, a sleek, sharp blade about 12 inches long. The lightning flame blade appeared razor-sharp, its surface glinting with an icy sheen that made it look incredibly deadly. Watching its spectacular entrance, Jiraiya couldn't help but feel even more excited. He reached out to grab the blade, noting that it was so light it felt almost weightless. Bang, bang, with a few quick swings in the air, the blade emitted sharp, explosive sounds, as though it was slicing through the very fabric of the atmosphere. Jiraiya turned his attention to a small floorbeat about half a meter high in his home. Raising his right hand, he brought the blade down in a clean arc. The floorbeat split neatly in two, the cuts impossibly smooth. He felt no resistance during the swing, as if the blade was cutting through water. Next, Jiraiya retrieved an ordinary shuriken and tested it against the lightning flame blade. With a swift motion, the shuriken was effortlessly cleaved in two, the edges perfectly straight. So sharp, Jiraiya marveled aloud. Even without considering any additional abilities, the lightning flame blade was already an exceptional ninja tool. If this blade fell into the hands of an assassin, it would undoubtedly make them far deadlier. What are the lightning flame blade's abilities? Jiraiya asked the system. Surely, the blade had more to offer. Reporting to the host, the lightning flame blade can absorb chakra from lightning style and fire style jutsu cast by enemies, reducing the power of those jutsu. The absorbed chakra is stored within the blade. The host can then use the stored chakra to release lightning or fire attacks. The more chakra absorbed, the greater the power of the attack. The system's explanation was thorough. It's somewhat similar to the same hata wielded by Kisame Hashigaki, Jiraiya mused. The same hata could devour chakra and transfer it to its wielder, but it lacked the ability to enhance the power of jutsu. How much chakra from enemy jutsu can it absorb? Jiraiya asked, knowing this was a critical detail. It can absorb approximately 50% of the chakra contained in an enemy's jutsu. That much. Jiraiya was stunned. The ability to cut an enemy's jutsu power in half was incredible. What's the maximum amount of chakra the blade can store? There is no upper limit to the amount of chakra the lightning flame blade can absorb. However, it must be used within 30 minutes, otherwise, the chakra will dissipate. Only 30 minutes? That's a pity, Jiraiya muttered, slightly disappointed. If there were no time limit, he could inject chakra into the blade daily, storing an immense amount for emergencies. It would have been a formidable trump card. How much does it enhance jutsu power? Jiraiya asked one last question. The system quickly replied, it enhances the power of jutsu by 60%. Jiraiya's eyes lit up. A 60% boost effectively meant that a single jutsu would hit with the force of nearly 2. All things considered, the lightning flame blade was undeniably a powerful ninja tool. Jiraiya was certain that even in the entirety of Konohagakure, there wasn't a single ninja tool of this caliber. Ding! Daily sign-in mode has been activated. The system's voice sounded again. What's daily sign-in mode? Jiraiya asked, confused. Reporting to the host, with daily sign-in mode activated, the host can now sign in every day to receive rewards. While daily rewards are generally less valuable than the 7-day sign-in rewards, they are still premium items and will not disappoint the host. Hearing this, Jiraiya was thrilled. This would allow his strength to grow even faster. Can I do today's daily sign-in now? He asked eagerly. 7-day sign-ins and daily sign-ins do not conflict. The host may proceed with today's daily sign-in. Sign in, Jiraiya said immediately, wasting no time. His system was turning out to be incredibly user-friendly. If only it could become even more generous in the future, perhaps allowing sign-ins every hour. Sign-in successful. You have obtained the lightning chakra transformation. The system notification made Jiraiya feel a tingling sensation throughout his body, like a mild electric shock. The process lasted only a few seconds. Well done, system, Jiraiya exclaimed in delight. Just moments ago, he had been lamenting his lack of a lightning chakra nature, which would have limited the effectiveness of the lightning flame blade. But now, the system had resolved the issue entirely. This meant he could fully unleash the blade's potential. At the same time, Jiraiya was awed by the system's capabilities. It had altered something that was supposed to be determined at birth. In the world of Naruto, lightning-style jutsu that could pair with ninja tools were far more abundant than fire-style ones. Finding compatible techniques would be much easier now. Every subscriber brings us closer to more epic novels. Join Infinite Novel today.